Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 72 of the Parenting Autism Podcast. You can find us on the web at www.parentingautismshow.com. You can reach out to us by email at parentingautism@att.net. And you can also find us on all the social media channels. And welcome to episode 72. We're your hosts, Sandy and Chris Coulter.
Hello, hello.
And Sandy, I was introducing, that we're on all the social medias. I noticed that we're getting a lot of Instagram followers lately.
Oh, have we?
So they must be finding us.
That's great. And I have to say, I'm not on there very often.
I know. I post when we have, a key moment or something, I'll post a blurb about whatever it is. So
yeah, that's
people know, yeah.
Yep. So it's been a couple weeks. We've had things going on. I do have a primary topic I want to talk about today.
Okay.
It has to do with our senses and relating to Bryce and just things that I'm learning. But we can talk about also, we've had some doctor appointments and follow-ups.
You want me to start with his GI doctor?
Go for it.
So, last week, we haven't talked about his neurology either, have we?
No.
Okay, so
he's been to two doctors.
Yeah, so we saw his neurologist first, and he was very excited for us and impressed with how Bryce has been coming along. It's been how many years since he's 2 years, I think?
2 years ago. We went in 2019.
Yeah. So Bryce has made a lot of progress since he saw him last. So we just wanted to go for a checkup and follow up on some blood tests that we did back in 2019 that we never followed up on because of COVID. And he looked at the results there and everything was fine. So we were good. And it just sounds like we don't really even need to see him again unless there is like a seizure problem or some type of brain problem.
To bring listeners up to speed if they're not familiar with our story and haven't heard every episode about Bryce has a history with his neurologist since the week he was born because he had a grade 4 brain hemorrhage. And he did have seizures and was on seizure medication for a couple years. We were able to wean him off, and that was actually before his autism started revealing itself to us. So we were established with the neurologist, which helped us get our autism diagnosis much faster than many other families who have to wait for someone to get an appointment to get them that diagnosis and the services. So it all's worked out for a blessing for us. But when Dr. Corrales saw him the last time, which was a couple of years ago, he said this time Bryce is very present. And that's the word that he was trying to say because the last time Bryce was still pretty much in his own world. I remember him just running up and down the hallway, trying to keep him contained and, engaged. And this time Bryce was asking him, did you help save me? Because he was wanting to know who we were going to go see, and we were explaining why. And then Dr. Corrales just randomly said to Bryce, did you see the picture on my wall? And Bryce turned around and he goes, who's in the picture? And Bryce like, it's Mickey Mouse. He's a doctor. And he was very impressed that Bryce responded to his name, engaged in a conversation with him, and was tuned in. So it was really, really good and encouraging. Yeah,
it was. And then the week after, or later on that same week, I think it was the week after, we had a GI doctor appointment from Nicholas Children's Hospital. And for those that you have been listening, Bryce has just been having trouble moving his bowels. It was every 4 to 6 days that we were getting bowel movements when we figured out that, hey, this is not good. What's going on? So we changed our diet to gluten-free, casein-free, corn-free, soy-free, egg-free, and
any potential allergen-free.
Yeah, and we thought that would improve his bowel movements, which wasn't the case. So next, we had the Vital 10 from Claire Labs, and that was making his stool softer. Sorry for the detail, people. But he was still not going as often as we expected him to.
Right. So it became easier for him. So it was good.
Right.
And that way, but the frequency wasn't what we were wanting to see.
And, from what we know, the longer you keep your stool in your body, the more not good it is for yourself. So anyway, I researched and
Poop talk.
Poop talk. We started him on magnesium citrate, 150 milligrams a day, and thankfully that was good for him. And we've moved his bowel movements up to every 2 to 3 days from every 4 to 6 days. So. That was good, but we still wanted to see the GI doctor to make sure that we were doing everything right and if there was anything else we wanted to do. So you were working and I took him in.
Yeah, I figured this one was not a difficult
meeting. I went in, and it was helpful for me to have 2 printed calendar months of bowel movements. So we had June and July, and I filled in all the days, and he was quickly able to see how often he was moving his bowels. He said, okay, so he examined them, and he didn't feel any hard parts in his tummy or his bowels, so that was a good sign. And he said, well, there's 2 ways we can go about doing this to get him to move more frequently. He says, ideally, if we could get him moving every other day, that would be great. And if we can get him moving every day, that would be even better. So he said the 2 ways we could do it. And if you're part of the autism community, you may have heard of Miralax for helping your bowels move. Well, there's been a lot of controversy about Miralax and what it does to kids on the spectrum. And so I was familiar with that. And he's a regular medical doctor. He's not a functional medicine doctor. So, he was explaining to me that option 1 was to do a total gut clean out and reset his gut. And so he preceded all this with about a 10-minute conversation to me about how Miralax was safe and it was proven safe and all this other stuff about how okay Miralax is to give to your kid. Well, you have that information, and then you have your community of autism families in the field that have used Miralax and have seen the results from that. And you have to weigh out the 2. You got a doctor on one hand telling you one thing, and then you got real life people telling you another thing. So I wasn't too keen on where he was going with it, but he basically told me that it's going to be 48 hours of pure terribleness, and he's going to have to drink a whole bottle of Miralax, and then I think I stopped listening at that point. And then
sounds like a colonoscopy prep.
Yeah,
I wouldn't put him through that if I didn't have to.
So I said, okay, well, what's option 2? And he says, well, you're doing a great job with the magnesium citrate. And I was like, okay, yes, that's a score. And he said option 2 would be to, instead of giving him 1 capsule, 150 milligrams a day, would be to give him 1 in the morning, 150 milligrams, and 1 in the evening, 150 milligrams. And that should increase his movements, and also try to sit him on the potty 3 times a day. And they go by age. So Bryce is 7, and so he wanted 7 minutes on the potty 3 times a day. And I said, well, I really don't want to put my family through option 1, and I didn't have to explain my fears of Miralax. I said, I'd rather go with option 2. I said, why the big difference? What benefit could cleaning out his gut do? And he said, well, if there's any hard stool in there that just hasn't come out, that will help move it out. I'm like, well, let's try option 2 with the magnesium citrate. And he's like, okay, not a problem. And so that's what we're doing. We're trying to up his magnesium citrate. I think it was just last week that we saw the doctor, so we really haven't seen any difference yet. And when I went to go sit him on the potty, he's like, well, Daddy, I don't have any poops. I don't need to sit on the potty. So he's just...
He says, unless I feel poops in my butt, I don't need to do it.
I know. So it's...
Hey, I mean...
But, you know, when you sit on the potty, your body and your mind talk to each other, you know, and sometimes it can move things along. Yeah. So I have to work a little harder at getting him onto the potty to, you know, see if he has to go. It might
cost you money. He responds with things for money.
Yeah.
I'm just serious.
Yeah. So we'll see.
And speaking of that, if I can change that topic, Bryce has slept in his room by himself the past 4 nights without us going in until he falls asleep. And that's major progress. And that came about because he was in our bed. And it's usually, do you want the protector or the snuggler? And you're the protector and I'm the snuggler, and he'll make a choice. And then one of us goes into the room and lays with him until he falls asleep, and then we can come back into our room. And by the time the other comes, if I come back to the room, you're pretty much asleep, vice versa.
Yeah.
So we really have no quality time to talk or have an evening together without Bryce present. So we were laying in bed, and honestly, I'm just coming off of a 10-day cold, or a couple weeks actually. And I was tired. You were tired. Neither of us really wanted to go for the whole routine. So Bryce says, Daddy... No, you said, you want to sleep by yourself tonight. That's what you said. Do you want to sleep by yourself tonight? And then he goes, Daddy, would you give me $1 if I sleep in my room all by myself? And you said, Bryce, I will give you $5 if you sleep in your room by yourself.
Yeah.
He popped up and he said, wow, this is way better than I thought.
And he was on his way out of the bed.
He was off our bed. He goes, okay, I'm going to bed now. Bye-bye. I'm going to sleep all night. Okay? Yeah. And then as he's leaving our room and walking toward his room in the kitchen, he turns around and he said, don't forget to give me my $5, Daddy. You understand? He went in his room. He shut his door. And then you're like, oh, he didn't go potty. And he literally came right back out, went to the bathroom, went back in his room. I think he came back and asked you to set an alarm for him.
Yeah.
And then he slept the whole night by himself. And so then the second night, he wanted to know how much money.
Well, the second day. Well, the day after, he wakes up.
Yeah.
And he says, I got up in the middle of the night.
Oh, he did, yeah.
What'd you get up for, buddy? He's like, well, I was trying to find Mickey, but I couldn't find him.
Because we had said, Mickey will sleep with you, and he couldn't find Mickey. So we made sure the next night Mickey was tucked in the bed with him.
It was cute.
But he didn't come in our room because he wanted that $5, and he went back to bed.
Yeah.
And then... So the next night, he wanted to know if we'd give him $5 again. So you said, I don't know, ask Mommy. And I said, no, but we'll give you $4. Okay. So he was happy with that. And he's using these to buy these games for his Switch. So it's great. And so we've now negotiated from 5 to 4. The next night was 3. And then he didn't ask me last night how much it was going to be. But this morning, I said, how did you sleep last night? He goes, it was amazing. How much money do I get for last night? So I said, how about $1? And he goes, I think it should be 2. I said, all right, we'll do 2. So I gave him 2. So it's like he's kind of figured out the pattern. Tonight we'll try for 1, and then we'll just wean him off. But it's really sweet. It's a huge accomplishment, and the money works for him, you know. And it's textbook ABA, where you start with the big reward and then you gradually fade it out to where they do it on their own and they don't have to have the reward. Now it's established.
Yeah, it's a habit.
And it's working really well.
So that's great. And then on another note, I don't know if I mentioned it last time or if we were even doing it last time in the podcast, but I found this local... it's called the Special Java Cafe.
Is new.
Yeah. And I didn't realize it, but there's a group that meets on Wednesdays here at this cafe, and this awesome gentleman brings in all these musical instruments for these special needs kids to play, and they just have a blast. So I started...
With adults too, correct?
Yeah, adult kids. Yeah. Well, I mean adult kids, but adult special
and
needs.
Children with special needs.
So we started going, and Bryce really loved it the first time. He got to play guitar and drums and a keyboard, and that seems to be like what he wants to do when he goes there. So the second time we went, we realized that they were practicing for a performance at a local church. And we're like, oh, that's so cool. And lo and behold, the gentleman invited us after Bryce, he saw Bryce playing. He says, you guys are welcome to come and play with us on the stage, And boy, Bryce lit up, and he is so excited.
It's later today.
And I told him, I said, there's going to be clapping, at the end of your songs. Oh, clapping for me? I said, yes, they will be clapping for you. I said, are you okay with that? Oh, yes, that would be perfect or something, he says. So he's expecting clapping, and he's just excited about doing it.
Yeah, and that's going to be later today. And that was the first question he asked me this morning was, what time will I be on the stage today, Mom?
Yeah,
so
great.
He's very excited about it.
And his music therapist loaned us a drum set because he thought that Bryce might be a natural drummer. He might have that natural talent, and it turns out it sounds like that he does. And so he sold us his drum set that he had in storage, really cheap. And so Bryce is so excited to have his own drum set. We started drum lessons earlier this week, and he was excited about that. And so it's great.
We have a little drummer, and this morning he had his music therapy with Mr. Tom, and they were jamming in there. And Mr. Tom is really impressed, and he said Bryce is learning at lightning speed. And even the drum instructor said to you, so he's been playing a while.
Yeah, he's played before.
No, just Saturday.
He just got this drum set.
And he's like, he's only played since Saturday, and he's like, well, yeah, and he's like, wow, well, he's a natural.
Yeah, he's going to be good.
So we've kind of tapped into his talent.
It's exciting.
Which is very exciting and kind of leads into what I want to talk about today, which has to do with two senses that I didn't know that we had.
Yeah.
I'm 52 years old, and all I knew were the five senses that you learn when you're in school.
Well, we didn't have to learn the other ones because up to that point, people weren't having problems with the other two.
Well, if they were, I wasn't aware of it.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way.
Let's put it that way.
But even in Bryce's 5 years of the autism journey, I have not stumbled upon what I've really started to understand now. And I think that's because we're in different stages, and I'm seeing new behaviors come out of Bryce that I haven't seen before. And so I'm wondering what it's all about and what I can do to help him. And that's how I'm stumbling on this. So the two senses that I'm referring to, and this may be new to some, and other people being like, well, duh, we knew this. But for me, I did not. I only briefly mentioned that Bryce was having some vestibular feedback with some sensory input because of some things that he's doing that's been kind of bizarre. He walks with his head tilted with his ear toward the floor and his eyes looking up, and I was told that that's some type of vestibular feedback for him. And then he's been sitting upside down on furniture. Yeah. And that was pointed out to me that's kind of like
and
work
this is
from
all
work.
Since we've changed our food plan. Pretty much, yeah. So, and he's got a lot more energy.
Yes, and I do think by changing his diet, which has given him more awareness in many ways, it has also emerged these other things because it's affecting his systems.
Right.
So that's where I just heard about vestibular, but I really didn't go any deeper than that. I just said, oh, well, he obviously has a lot of energy. That's how I see it. We got to help this boy get it out. So we've talked the past couple episodes that we took him to the trampoline place where he can spin and where he can jump, and that's been helping him. So we knew we were doing some right things. But I didn't understand the depth of this, and that's what I really want to talk to you about, not just the listeners. I really want to talk to you about this because we haven't had a chance to talk in depth.
For sure.
And I want to give a shout out to someone who sent us a book, because this is what really put it on my radar this week. So there's Dr. Rima Naim, and she's an OTR/L. I know it's OT, occupational therapy.
Yep, and some other
but
things.
she is based out of Los Angeles area, and reached out to us through the podcast and said that she had just was releasing her second book of the adventures of the Senso kids. And so apparently she had a first one. Now she's got a second one. And this particular one, I think, matches up with Bryce probably better than the first one, because this one is called I've Got the Wiggles. And so, we don't typically have guests on here, which is what we've explained to many people who have reached out to us. But if you want to share something with us, and definitely if we find value in it, we'll share it with the listeners. So they sent us the book. And so you had said, you want to read this book and tell me what you think? So I said, sure. So I read it this week. And as I was reading it, I'm like, wow, this is really describing Bryce in many ways, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I was really relating to it. And they got 3 parts. And so the first part was explaining that we have 7 senses. So again, I was familiar with 5. I didn't even realize vestibular was defined as a sense. But then I guess there's another one. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right. Yeah.
Proprioception.
Thank you. Proprioception. Yeah. So that's the other one. So I'm like, oh, okay. So she's talking about that. And I can see with Bryce where the proprioception one is like lots of pulling and shoving and feeling your muscles. I like the way she wrote her book in the sense that she kind of broke it down into terms that a parent can understand. And I know she's designed it for the kids. I'm not so sure that Bryce, there's a lot of words. So Bryce wouldn't read this book at this point, but right. I felt it was definitely more educational for me. And by educating me as his parent, it's going to help me in turn help him, because it's identifying to me ways that I can help him and really what these issues were. And you and I have talked about occupational therapy, and I've even said, I really don't understand it. And I've said that since he was 2 when he first started going. I said, I'm sure it's good for him, but I really don't understand it. And even when we get reviews of what he's working on, or we're looking at the plan and they use the word spatial, and I'm like, we kind of joke, because when my mom says special, she says spatial with her cute Kentucky accent. I didn't even know what spatial awareness was. And I still am learning it now. But I realize it has to do like helping him with his balance, helping him know his awarenesses, right? Where he is. Go ahead. What's your take on it? Know where his
body is in space.
Yeah, know where. But when you hear that, know where your body is in space, what does that really mean?
Yeah.
What do you think that really means?
Well, that means like to be like when they put him on the swing.
Yeah.
That you're swinging with the swing, or occupational isn't just about that. I mean, the name itself is a little confusing. Occupational, my first thought was, well, he's not working. What does he need this for an occupation for? But really, they work on the muscles, muscle tone.
Right, so that came up, muscle tone. I understood that.
Do a lot of that.
The core, because we know the core is very important to so many things. But I feel like where I was missing it, like I think those are a lot of the basics. But I didn't understand the importance of helping him with these 2 particular senses. And I'm sure they know all of this, and that's what they've studied. But it never really rang my bell until I read this book.
Yeah, I don't think they've talked to us about it or used those words in their evaluations.
Yeah, I mean, so maybe that's why it went by me. And to be honest, on this journey, you're focusing on so many different things. And the reason why it's coming on my radar right now is because this is probably the biggest headline that's been in our house. We've kind of thankfully moved past the self-injurious behaviors. But now we're having all these other behaviors that he's doing that he's not trying to hurt himself, but I'm afraid he's going to accidentally hurt himself because he is climbing up on the furniture.
Yeah.
He's spinning around.
He's tumbling.
Tumbling. He's not trying to hurt himself by crashing into things, but he gets something from that. And so we're trying to find safe ways for him to get these energies out. And then in this book that I'm referring to, in the 3rd chapter, and she kind of has these superheroes. And so she has the one that they call him Vizzy. Mm-hmm. So that's easier. And, and that'd probably be a great way for us to explain it to Bryce. You have your Vizzy superpower in you, and we're going to try to help it, which is what I want to try to explain to him. So that has to do with his vestibular. But the little boy, they're describing him sitting in a circle at school, and it's circle time, and the teacher's speaking, and he sees a cat outside the window. So then he starts thinking about his cat. And now he's thinking about his cat and how he loves his cat, and he wants to pet it. And now he's rolling on the floor as he's thinking about playing with his cat.
Yeah.
And he's totally disconnected from the teacher, totally disconnected from his classmates. The teacher's going to get frustrated. But he's really not intentionally doing anything wrong. His mind just wandered off. He shifted focus, and now he's moving. Mm-hmm. And that would be Bryce, because Bryce needs constant movement.
And let me just interject right there. And that's, as parents, what we need to think about with our kids is when they are distracted, it's not their fault. We want them to listen to us, of course. And when we call their name, sometimes we think of what a typical child might do. A typical child might hear their name and turn and look at you. And when we don't get that from our children, we get a little frustrated, but we just have to pause and remember that their brain is wired differently.
It's very different.
And it's not their fault that they can't we can't get their attention right away, and things like that.
Yeah. And it does help when you can understand the differences and that you can understand the reasons behind it. Mm-hmm. And, the teacher had said to him in this story, you really need to, before, find a way to get those Vizzies out is basically it. Spin, jump, clap, whatever it is that works for you, right? That's what I'm getting out of this, the short version. And so I'm thinking about it, and I know, before you start class with him, because you homeschool Bryce, for those that don't know, and so you will do yoga because that kind of gets him centered a little bit.
Yeah, and that's what I've learned with these types of sensitivities.
Right.
It's better to do exercise, and we do singing, and we do push-ups and sit-ups, just to organize himself. And prepare himself for paying attention.
Yes, and I heard you singing Father Abraham the other day because it got mentioned in a message, and I said, "Oh, we did that as kids," and it's very active. So I think that's a great song for you to do before school, because after reading this, it helps him organize his thoughts. It helps settle him down in his brain, and it will help him focus better for school. So that's a good one because you move your arms up and down.
And your feet.
You move your feet, and if they do it right, you spin around and sit down at the end.
We spin around.
Yeah. So that song gives a lot of those motions that will help him. And then I was saying when it gets cooler outside, you could take him out in the backyard and do the zip line with him and spin him on it and take him back and forth and give him that morning exercise to, again, and I've heard before the reference, organize his thoughts. And it's funny because on this autism journey, you do hear a lot of therapists talk to you. And I can remember so specifically when Bryce was 3 and he was getting interviewed to get into the school system because he was out of the early steps. Learning. Yeah. And so they were seeing if he qualified, and the occupational therapist was talking. She was using terms that it was like wah 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 wah. I checked out on her.
Yeah.
And I remember that. And when we come into this world, it's not familiar to us. And so to the others, the professionals, it is familiar to them. They sometimes forget to use the words that we're going to understand. So even using the phrase, and I've had his different therapists I've heard say, he needs to organize his thoughts. what does that really mean? Okay, and the one good description that we got from Miss Diana, his BCBA from before, she said Bryce's brain is like a filing cabinet. And we all have that. And the filing cabinet, I mean, for those who haven't heard this before, the filing cabinet is organized in our brain. So if I said to you,
everything's labeled.
Go do this,
Yep.
you could go right to it and you could pull that thought and you could respond to me quickly. For Bryce, all of his folders aren't labeled, or they're thrown all over the floor. They're not alphabetical. They're not systematic. They're not organized.
Right.
So he's thinking when you're asking him a question, and when we rush him, that doesn't help because he's seriously trying to go and find that answer for us. But he can't because his thoughts aren't organized.
Right.
But maybe if we start tapping into this vestibular system for him, it will help organize his thoughts, which I understand that a little better now for a visual. And he will be able to focus more and not be so lost or random thoughts. Because I hear him, when we're trying to focus on one thing and his brain is in a whole other place thinking about something entirely different, and we have to bring him back to where we're wanting him to focus. I think we're just on to something here.
Yeah.
And so I definitely wanted to say thank you again for sending us this book. And I'll add a link to it in the show notes for anybody else that wants to check this out. Again, I can't say enough that it's really helped me and not only helped me learn, but it sparked an interest for me to go and pursue learning more about this. So I said, this would be a great podcast topic because I don't know who all knows about this. And others that do know about it might be able to send me links or send me information that's going to help me learn more about it. But I just printed 2 things today, and I told you we were going to talk today.
Yeah.
So I'm reading this, and we'll talk about the proprioceptive system. Am I saying it right?
Proprioception.
Thank you. I knew I was going to blow that. So anyway, I would say the PP system, but that sounds bad. So we'll go with that. But activities that target this particular system. And the number one that's underlined and bolded is weighted blankets. And so I want to speak to that because we tried a weighted blanket with Bryce when he was younger.
Yep.
And I remember we had somebody that we ordered it. It was handmade, and I think we spent $70 on it or something like that because it has to correlate with your weight, your body weight, and all of those kind of things. So we bought the weighted blanket. We put it on him. He didn't want it on him. It really did. It didn't benefit us at that time. Or we couldn't see any benefits. I'll say it that way. So then I think it was last year, Pier 1 was going out of business. And I was in there doing my Christmas shopping because I love Pier 1. And I saw this weighted blanket on clearance for like 70% off. And I remember sending you a picture, and I'm like, I think we should get this. And it's like $20-some. I'm like, yeah, let's try it. And if he doesn't like it, maybe we'll like it.
Yeah.
So I got the blanket. We brought it home, and we each tried it. But Bryce really took to it. We did like it. And I went to try to get more, and they were all gone.
Yeah.
So I found it calming. But now he's in his room, and we have it on his bed, which fits perfectly. And he really does take to that. And the other night, before he started staying in there by himself, I was in there with him. Actually, it might have been that last night that I was in there with him. And he had his legs up on the wall. I mean, he was like all over the bed. He couldn't calm himself. Yeah. And so I said, and we were in the dark, and we were talking, and I said, Bryce, how about if I put the blanket on you? And you know what he said to me? He said, thank you, Mommy.
Oh, wow.
Like, he didn't know to get
That's
it.
what he needed.
But when I said, how about if I put the blanket on you? He thanked me.
Oh.
And then I put it on him, and I'm not kidding. In less than 5 minutes, he was sound asleep. So, I share this because there may be things that you try once and they don't work. And then your child progresses, and now they're in a different season. They're at a different stage. and you go back and you revisit something, and this time it works. You know, and things that we've tried now for things that worked before may not work. It's a cycle, but for Bryce, the weighted blanket right now is a very good thing. And I just feel like, again, I had no idea how to do with this particular system. We just know people recommend it. I remember when he was at the therapy place when he was like 3 and 4 years old, and they would put the weights on his ankles and a weighted blanket on his lap.
Even a weighted vest.
And a weighted vest, right? I remember the first time we were kind of like,
what is that?
What are they doing to our child, right? Weighting him down. But they're like, it helps calm him. And they might have even said it helps organize his thoughts. I don't know. But they were explaining that it was beneficial for him.
Yeah.
So, again, there's a lot of trust that you put into what the therapists are saying because that's their expertise. We never needed that at home or tried that, but I can understand, why you would try these different things to help your child. And what I'm reading from here is it all has to do with signals from the brain to the body. So it's 100% neurological. And that's what we're dealing with Bryce, And so the other things they put, you can tell me if you think these apply to Bryce, but so weighted blanket, yes. So then the other activities to target this is climbing. Now, what have I just said? He is climbing on everything. And that's relatively new.
Right.
He's not always, we will see him literally on the top of our couch trying to walk across the top of the couch.
I see some parents out there nodding with you. They're like, yes, that's my
kid.
So
that is new to me. And you're like, whoa, what are you doing? I mean, he's like making it a tightrope up there on the couch.
I know, yeah.
Now he has your favorite place to store things away from Bryce has been on top of our refrigerator.
Yeah.
Well, you got to find a new place because now he, with no fear whatsoever, he will climb up the counter to get on top of the refrigerator to get whatever it is that you've hidden from him. Yeah. So these are all new climbing developments. Carrying heavy objects and wearing a heavy bag. But I think in fact, when he was little, we called him Bam Bam because he was so strong. And he loved to carry heavy things. And I was watching, Facebook is great about giving you these Facebook memories.
Flashbacks.
It's probably like my favorite thing about Facebook. And so the other day, I saw this earlier this week. So Bryce would have been 1 when no, not even 1. I'm sorry, because it was 7 years ago. So this is before he was even 1. He was just trying to learn to walk.
Yeah.
So he was 10 months old, and he was taking his car seat, and he was pulling it across the room. And then he was using it to stand up, and then he'd push it all the way across the floor. I can remember also when Bryce was learning to stand, when he was between 1 and 2, he would go to dresser drawers, and he would open and close and open and close and open and close. And remember the one time he opened and it fell to the floor and it missed him? So then we had to lock his dresser into the wall.
For sure.
And now I understand reading this, that all that pushing and pulling and the weight of it was his brain feeding his body and vice versa.
Even when we first started going bowling, he would go for the heaviest ball.
And he still will do that. And very good point. So he seeks heavier weights. It's something that relates with him.
Yeah. So
something, again, that I've never associated specifically with his neurological autism. I don't even know what I'm saying. But anyway. Yeah. Play-Doh. Well, there's one that Bryce has no interest in Play-Doh.
Yeah.
He really never has. But I do know other kids on the spectrum that was like their go-to. Absolutely love Play-Doh.
I like the smell of it.
Some do. The smell of it. I'm glad Bryce never was into smelling or eating it. Stress balls. And Bryce really isn't into that, but I know that that's a reliever. Pressing against with a pillow, a box of beans. These are just ideas, but painting with paintbrushes. Bryce is just starting to do some painting. Yeah,
he's painting with his art
because he's
therapist.
doing the art. Sucking through a straw. Bryce does do that.
He likes a straw.
And he does like that, which is good. But we are trying to get him to use the open cup too. But those were the big things for me. And then it says dysfunction in the, say it again, what's the PP system?
Proprioception.
Thank you. that can lead your child to actions that may seem odd. So, if there's some type of disorder, hold on that
Here
thought.
it comes.
Hey, bud, come on in. Yes, sir, come in. Hi.
Hi. Big smile.
I just knocked.
You did
Yeah.
knock.
Did you
Thank
hear a knock?
I did
Yeah.
hear the knock.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
knocking. That's the right thing to do.
Thanks,
is knock.
buddy. Did you want to say something?
I gotta tell you something.
Okay, well, we're doing the podcast, right?
That is Super Nintendo.
Super Nintendo. Wow, that's a free one. Yeah, you can download that one. It's free. Thanks for
Okay.
telling us.
Have fun.
Close the door, please.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So the dysfunction in this system can lead to these kind of actions. Moving too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely see that with Bryce. In fact, we have often said to him, slow down, buddy. You're going to fall.
Everything's a race. He wants to be first wherever he goes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and he moves too quickly,
Yeah.
Again, a Facebook video, but I was watching from when he was 2. And it's funny now because it's like the 20/20 hindsight, but things that you
Right.
see now that you didn't see then. So when he was 2 was when his love for elevators really
yeah.
came on the radar. And we were staying at a hotel, and so we were recording, and he called the elevator ding because it would make the ding sound. So we had come out of our room, and we were recording him running down the hallway. And again, he was so little, moving so fast. Like he almost outran himself to where he was going to fall. But he was running down to the elevator and the whole time going ding, 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 But I think about him like he's always run so fast. Crashing into things. And when he gets to, like, I've seen him crashing into the furniture and the walls. And he was doing that when he was frustrated as like a self-injurious behavior. And I know there was some feedback with that as well. But when we take him to the bounce place in a healthy, safe environment, he loves crashing into the wall trampoline.
Yeah.
That gives him that bounce that he gets to do, which is great. Seeming lethargic. That would not be Bryce.
No.
Poor awareness of where their body is and how to move it smoothly. And I have to say that his coordination is actually really good.
Balance and coordination.
Surprisingly good.
Yeah.
Like he does well riding a bike. He does well with playing soccer and kicking the ball and that sort of thing. But I do know that can be a struggle for others. Walking on tiptoes, which Bryce really hasn't had that, but I do know that that's fairly common as well. And it has to do with that system. But here's one, babe. Chewing on shirt. Do you remember
went
when
through
he
that
chewed
stage
on his shirts to where
all the
he had
time.
holes in his collars? And like we were running out of shirts
Yeah.
because it was so bad. And then I would take the shirts that had holes in them and convert those to his pajama tops because
Thankfully, that was a stage.
it was. But here it was. And
Yeah.
I remember we kept asking
The therapist.
the therapist, like, what can we do? And they're like, well, he's seeking feedback. So we got the vibrating toothbrush. We got, crunchier foods.
Right.
Having no idea that it was neurologically from the system, that something was dysfunctional. And yes, you still have to solve it, but I didn't know the root cause of the problem.
Yeah.
So that was one that definitely applied to Bryce. And I'm so glad we're past that one. And I really pray that's not a boomerang and doesn't come back. Weakened muscles, which again, I think Bryce has a weak core, but I don't know. I'm sure he does have weak muscles, but again, he's really coordinated, which I'm grateful for that. But poor endurance or posture, he's really good with that. And he doesn't slump, but that can also be a sign, of that there's an issue or a struggle with that sense. And then clumsiness.
Sorry.
Chris is I'm like, are you okay over there? You look like you're choking.
I'm the one coughing today.
Movements that are robotic or flappy. And Bryce definitely has flappy. So now I know where that's coming from because Bryce flaps his hands a lot. In fact, that was the very first sign that I saw that had me concerned that ended up being the telltale sign that he had autism. Was because when he would get excited, he would flap his hands up and down. And he doesn't flap his hands like in front of his face to watch his fingers, which I know for some it's a visual stem. For Bryce, it's just pure excitement. And it goes up and down, up and down, up and down. And so I didn't realize that was a neurological dysfunction that had to do with that particular sense. Holds writing implements too tight or too loose. He does struggle with his grip. Looks with eyes to make body position adjustments. And I think that's what I was talking about when he has his head to the side so that he has a different peripheral view. Yeah, a different view with his vision. Getting that feedback. And then difficulty judging force or distance, like he doesn't know that he's
what he
hitting
has
something
trouble
too
with
hard.
judging is time. He has no concept of how long things take. Like if you say, oh, that's not going to take long. Well, how long is it going to take? Well, it's going to take 10 minutes. Oh, that is a super long time.
Yeah. Now he says forever.
Yeah. So that's interesting too.
That is interesting. And it could be where it's just not connecting that way. And then it says frequent hitting or pushing incidents. And again, I'm grateful that we haven't had that with Bryce, but for parents that you have that with your child, again, it may be that they're not trying to be mean. They need the feedback. They need the feedback, and you got to find healthier activities that's going to help regulate them. So I found all that very interesting today. So then it says, well, what are activities for the vestibular system? And so this one is using a rocking chair or just to rock back and forth. So think about Bryce when he was a baby. He loved to be rocked and for you to sing the ABC song to him. And if he was rocked and that song was being sung,
he'd go to sleep.
It was the calmest thing. And my mom would be like, wow, if you sing this song and rock him, it's like, I said, I know, right? But we didn't know why. And then the ABC song came in because Bryce is, what's that word again?
I don't know. Oh, proprioception?
No, the lexic one. Hyperlexic.
Hyperlexic.
So Bryce knew his entire alphabet and could identify letters and numbers when he was 18 months old.
Well, you know why the ABC song started.
Yeah, share it.
Well, I was in the hospital when he was just born.
Yeah.
And so I held him for the first time, and I really didn't know what to do as a new dad. And I couldn't remember any songs from my childhood, so I started with the ABC song.
Isn't that really sweet, though?
Yeah.
Because that truly was his favorite song that calmed him.
Yeah, it was great.
He was hyperlexic, still is hyperlexic. And we just thought we had a boy genius. We had no clue that it was one of his autistic superpowers.
Yeah, right.
So it's just kind of funny.
It is.
Okay, so another activity to target and help him with the vestibular system is swinging. And he does love swinging. Jumping. The boy does love jumping. Sliding. He does love sliding. And then spinning. And the spinning has taken on a whole new thing.
Yeah.
And that's why the playground is great for him because it gives him a chance to get all those things balanced. Now, here are some symptoms if there's dysfunctions with this sense. And so if you're seeing this, these are the red flags. Difficulty with attention or following instruction. Can we get an amen? That would be Bryce. Delay in speech or language skills.
Yep.
Amen. That would be Bryce. Poor eye control.
Yeah.
He definitely still struggles
with looking at people.
With looking people in the eye. It will happen occasionally, but it's definitely not up to par. Dysregulation. I mean, what does that mean? I think all of this means dysregulation, doesn't it?
I guess.
All right.
Not an expert on the
subject. That's where I'm looking for you, feedback on this stuff. Clumsiness. Again, I would say I wouldn't define Bryce as clumsy.
No.
Poor posture control.
No.
Often falls from chairs, but he doesn't. But that's something, again, that's a red flag for listeners that may not know that.
So if they find one of these issues, then they're supposed to do the spinning and the jumping to help with that?
And the sliding.
And all that. Okay, go ahead.
Those are things that will help regulate. Yep. And I'd say if you're seeing probably multiple of these, it will help. Poor hand, eye, or foot coordination.
Bryce
So
is
we
okay
work
then.
on his hand and eye coordination a lot, but I think he does really well with it. Unsteady when walking on the ground.
No.
He's good with that. Unable to be held in the air upside down or spun.
Oh, he would love that.
Bryce loves to be tickled. Bryce loves to
Upside
be
down.
spun, and
Yeah.
that would not be him. Unable to be, oh, yeah, I've just read that one. Dislikes tilting head backwards for like
No, he
washing
does
his
that.
hair.
Oh, for like washing his hair.
You know why that is?
Well,
Have
he
you
tilts
ever?
his head forward.
No. Have you ever put your head back like this and you feel dizzy? Oh, I know people can't see
I
me,
don't
but
know.
like if you tip your head all the way back to where your nose is going up in the air, I've done that before and the room will start to spin.
I've seen Bryce do that on his
So
own.
I'm speaking like for myself, that could be an issue with that.
Okay.
And I did hear, I know I'm segueing a little bit, but this conversation, I remember the inner ear can be off balance as well, and that can cause that dizziness. Like my mom has vertigo. And then when I was reading on this stuff this morning, I said, oh my gosh, I bet this applies to Dad because my dad is really having difficulty with balance, right? And we know he had the stroke. And I'm wondering now if the stroke combined with aging has affected his vestibular system and something that it may not be recovered, but if I don't think he's going to go to the playground and play, but I don't know if these other things will help him. Like we try to get him up to walk, but I don't know.
You said some of it can come with age, the vestibular
It does
issues.
say that. So I think he has 2 strikes against him. I think the stroke accelerated it. But like yesterday, he actually had a hard fall for the first time and injured his face. And, and that has been our biggest concern for him is the falling. So I sent this to my mom and I'm like, wow, maybe you can talk to your doctor about this, if there's something that can be done to help him.
See, I don't think regular medical doctors are going to be up on this stuff.
They may not be.
Yeah.
Then I'll just have to continue to research and see what we can do to help him.
That's what we do as parents.
Yeah, and that's what I want to do as a child for him to help. Stabilized himself by walking with hands on the walls. Do you remember when Bryce was in school with Miss Edwy?
He'd have his hand on
He
the wall.
constantly had his hand on the wall going down the hallway. And we're thinking he's seeking touch, but it wasn't for that. He was giving the feedback. And when I wrote down today, did I write that down? Yep. It's a brain signal to the body. So when he's doing those things, it's his brain then telling his body that it's in balance. I just find this all so
It probably
fascinating.
helps
You're just
him-
like
Well,
you know all this, but for me, I'm like, wow.
It probably helps him know where he is in space, is what I was saying before, is when you're touching the wall and you're going down the hall, it helps you organize where your body is,
Right. For
Yeah.
the spatial and the balance. It said here, what I wrote down, the other note was your vestibular system is like your brain traffic controller. So if you can picture it that way, think about if your brain traffic controller isn't working. So if we compare that to traffic, right? A traffic light. If the traffic light is out, what happens? Accidents happen. The traffic gets backed up. People don't move at a regular pace. So if Bryce's traffic signal isn't working correctly, he's going to move at a different pace. He's going to crash into things. He's going to clash with other people, whether it's an adult that's expecting something different of him or a peer that's expecting something. I mean, you just have to kind of really process all this and be like, wow, it's like he's got a traffic light out and we've got to help direct the traffic, find ways to help his brain direct his traffic better. I mean, that's like, to me, I have this huge aha moment. I feel like Oprah, aha, when she'd have her aha moment. But yeah, to me, it's just like very fascinating.
Wait until you read about primitive reflexes.
Oh, jeez. I can only do one thing at a time. This is not Bryce, afraid to go downstairs. That boy loves stairs. But I actually will say he will go up the stairs much faster than he will come down the stairs. He does use caution, and that's a good thing. Seems oblivious to the risk of heights or moving equipment. That would be Bryce. He doesn't care about heights. In fact, he seeks heights. When we go to a hotel, he wants the top floor so that he can look out and watch traffic moving, that he can see things differently from up high than when we're on a lower level. And he loves the Ferris wheel. He loves to look down from the Ferris wheel. So yeah, it's, I realize now it's like all this feedback for him. Doesn't get dizzy even with excessive spinning or getting overly dizzy. So on a prior podcast, when we went to the fair back in March, Bryce went on that.
Teacup, was it?
No, it wasn't. That was the one that went up and down. Like it was like a pirate ship. And then it spun in a big circle, and they wouldn't let you stay, or you didn't stay on because the seatbelt thing didn't fit right.
Oh, that was the guitar thing, wasn't
yeah,
it?
the guitar thing, right?
Yeah.
It was a guitar, so Bryce loved it because
it
it was an
went way
instrument.
up high in the sky, and then it came back
And then
down.
it actually spun in a circle. It spun literally all the way around. He went upside down in that thing.
Oh,
it was not just
I
up
didn't
and
know
down.
That. I was somewhere else.
No,
at
you
the
were
time.
there. You
I
just
know I was
forget
there,
things.
but I went
yeah.
somewhere. Yeah.
So Bryce does not mind, and I would have not have done that. And we did that other thing, was like a spinning circle in the swing, and we did that with him, and we both got off and went, holy cow, and I wanted to
And he
hurl.
wanted to do it again.
And he wanted to do it again. So yeah, he's got that gift there that we don't have. But maybe it's because my vestibular system is in balance and his is not. So that was really, really enlightening. That was one article that I had. This other one was talking about the brain traffic controller, but just to bullet point these, it was saying, like, more specifically to the vestibular system, it means good balance, as you want to work on that. It improves your visual tracking skills. It develops and maintains a normal muscle tone, which again, I know that's what they work on with him in occupational therapy. And it supports language development by integrating with auditory and visual senses. So again, I knew that they worked hand in hand, but I don't think I quite understood, and I'm still learning how they work hand in hand. Because you wonder, are these services benefiting Bryce? We're taking 3 hours a week of our time to take him there. Is he getting things out of this? And I've always felt yes when we have the conversations. Well, let's look at the plan. Is there anything we can add? I just wanted to understand it more. But I feel like the more I do research on this, because I'm only like a week into this, the more I'll be able to communicate with his therapist, and we can work on these things together. So I'm really excited about it because I feel like this is going to be really key for Bryce and his development, especially as he's getting older. Because again, what we dealt with when he was age 2, 3, and 4, and 5, I think we were so focused on language, right? But now language has come. Language still has a long way to go, and a lot of things we work on with him. But now we're seeing these other behaviors that are like, wow, this is new. Well, how can we help him with this? What is this all about? Or maybe they were there all along, but I was so hyper-focused on language that the other things weren't front and center of my attention.
Well, I think it's become front and center of your attention because of this diet change. All this energy is coming out of him now, and it's more obvious about what he's doing.
And he was given the diagnosis ADHD, and he definitely has an attention deficit disorder. I've said he really didn't have much of the hyperactivity part, but we have seen more of that. And now it makes sense to me, like, why we're seeing more of the active part of it, because he needs to get regulated. But again, I would rather not do any medication. I want to try everything that we can naturally to help him. And that's why hopefully this will be enough to work. And I have friends that they've put their children on the medication, and it has helped their world. And so every parent has to do what's best for them. But I know it's not an easy decision no matter what. And then there's side effects. So my one friend recently put her son on ADHD medication, but then she said that there were some side effects with it. He lost weight, and he was already little. And she didn't realize that he lost the weight until she weighed him. And then she's like, oh my goodness, he really did. So then school was out. So she took him off the medicine because he didn't need to focus in the school classroom for the summer. He gained the weight back, but then she could see that he wasn't he really did benefit from the medicine. So now she has to make that decision again. Okay, do I put him back on it for school? But if I do, what am I going to do about his health and his weight? So, there's so much thought that goes into that. It's not easy, it's just not easy. And that's part of the parenting wheelhouse that we deal with and not every parent has to deal with, an added layer there. Mm-hmm. Other thing here was helps with child self-care and independence. And I will say Bryce is doing such a great job with getting dressed on his own now. Mm-hmm. I've seen improvement there. His clothes are going, for the most part.
They're on the right direction.
The right direction and inside out or outside in.
Anyway,
the correct way. Yeah. He's aware of it. He's independently doing it. He's not asking for our help as much like he used to. Mm-hmm. So, those are good developments that we want. It encourages self-regulation. And again, we're working on that. And I even think Bryce being able to stay in his bedroom and self-soothe himself to the point that he can go to sleep without us is a huge development and progress for him,
For sure.
Something that I realize that many parents are able to do with their child when they're babies. I always said, if there was one department I failed in, it was the sleep department. And I don't care because I believe we did so many other things right. And it was like, if he needs us to fall asleep and he can't self-soothe and we didn't stick to a rigid schedule, so be it. When the time is right, he'll be able to go to sleep by himself. And I'm happy to say that at 7 years and 10 months, it's happened and he was ready.
Well, we did baby steps. He was in our room. First he was in our bed. Then we got him out of our bed into his own bed, but he was still in our room.
And his bed was in our room.
Then we got his bed to his room, but we had to go with him to get him to fall asleep. And now he's by himself. So
and we thought it was going to be his birthday, but he did it early. Yeah. We work at his pace.
That's it. You just got to go off of what they feed back.
Yeah. So, I'll just add this because it might be a little repetitive because it's a different article, but alerting vestibular activities, jumping, bouncing games, vertical up and down. They're saying even 20 to 30 seconds, but it just really gives a lot of body and brain input. And so I am planning on taking him to Defy. I felt so bad because we got that membership. I took him like 5 times, I think, in a week and a half. And then I got sick and I couldn't take him for 2 weeks. And I'm watching him around the house, like on the furniture, spinning, doing all these things. I'm like, his child needs this. And I didn't even know all these reasons, until this book enlightened me. But I knew he needs this. And so Monday, you sent me a video to work and you're like, we had to cut school and come here. And I was so happy. And it really helped. And I said, that's the beauty of homeschooling. If you need to reroute your child to go jump because you weren't going to get any focus from him.
That's what it was. He
did that. And now we know why. Because he was so unorganized in his brain that you would have completely failed that day. And so by doing that, without even knowing all of these facts, you just follow your gut instincts and that parental wisdom that is in there. You knew that was a good place to take him. And, you went and got your jumps out, and then he was able to go to therapy and had a good day. When I picked him up this week, there were good reports all week for him. Mm-hmm. There wasn't he wasn't focused, he wasn't with us. It was all really, really good. Now, I will say that one report that came back this week, they're working with him on puzzles. Bryce is not a puzzle fan. He's never been a puzzle fan. I don't know if it's because I thought maybe it had to do with the grip, because again, I don't understand all of this, but I believe what it is he's struggling with the visual of what it's going to be like. So he definitely needs to see the box to know what he's working toward. And he gets excited when it gets closer, but when it's not even close to being into form, I think he's more frustrated because he just doesn't know what to do. And for Bryce, he likes to achieve. He likes to get things done. He wants to get things right, like all of us. And if he feels like he's failing at something, he's going to get frustrated and he's going to want to quit before he even gets in there. But I love that the therapists are working with him on this. And they actually, this particular day, the OT therapist started with the puzzle, and then the language therapist finished the puzzle activity with him. And then she just added some language, skills in there with him. But she said, it was really neat to watch Bryce go from being so frustrated and not wanting to do it to getting excited when he actually finished it. And he knew he had this reward to play this particular game that he wanted to do, and he earned it. So, sometimes it might be, like he has another friend on the spectrum that can work a 1,000-piece puzzle and loves it. It's just wherever you're at on the spectrum, what comes easier for you and what doesn't. Okay, buddy, come on in. Sorry. Hi. How are you?
Oh, I got this.
You got this?
Look at this. It's in.
Yeah.
Bryce, do you want to talk to
These are a lot of switches.
Hey, buddy. Hey, Bryce. Can we pause the game for a moment so you can tell the people about your drumming, which is so good for your vestibular system?
What's this? Can I free download?
Come here.
Yes, but you have to talk to Mommy.
Come
first.
here.
Go talk to Mommy.
We're going to wrap
I'll
up.
hold this.
We're going to have Bryce here.
Okay, I got Bryce here.
We got Bryce here.
Don't you like my new drum set?
I do like your new drum set. What do you like about it?
I like that spare drum, but it shouldn't have been really hard because the
break.
stick could go right through it.
Yeah, the snare drum.
The snare
Let me
drum?
show you a bad dream.
Oh, you want to tell them about your bad dream last night?
Okay, tell us about your bad dream.
A refrigerator has rocket engines.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Okay.
This knocked down.
There it did. Our
knocked it down.
podcast wall knocked down. Okay, go ahead.
What does the podcast wall do?
Well, it helps Daddy sound, which he's freaking out right now.
It's all good.
We'll wrap up.
The walls
okay,
came
tell him about
tumbling
your
down.
dream. Go ahead.
Guess what?
Okay, go.
The
What?
refrigerator had rocket engines.
What?
And it blasted off into space, but ran out of fuel, and it crashed back to another house.
Oh, my
no,
goodness.
It crashed in the neighbor's house?
Yes.
That's a
that
great
is a
story.
Bad dream. All right. Well, thank you for
And the
sharing.
food knocked down.
Oh, the
no,
food fell
the food
out.
fell out.
All
What's-
right. Do you want to tell everybody to have a good week?
Yes.
Go ahead. Tell them.
Have a good week.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks for listening. We hope you got some good things out of this. Bryce is waving bye to you. We're going to wrap this up, and we'll see you next week.
Okay, bye.